So, good evening, everyone. Hi. Hello, sir. Hi, Deepak. Hi, ma'am.
Hi, Sakshi.
We can hear you.
Hi, Sakshi.
So, let's start. We welcome our esteemed panelists and audience. We are live with almost 15 attendees as of now, and we sincerely appreciate your interest in participating in this webinar titled Rebooting Employee Experience and Engagement in this New World of Hybrid Workplaces. My name is Sakshi Parashari, and I have with me my colleague Minimon, who will be co-hosting this session with me. So I welcome our esteemed panelist, Ms. Reshmi Shankar, who is the General Manager and Head, Facilities Management Group India and Bangladesh at Wipro Limited. Hi, ma'am. We have our second panelist, Mr. Sadanandan. He's the Vice President and Head, Corporate Services, BCM, and CSR at Tata Communications. Hello, sir.
Hi, everyone.
And our company founder and director, Mr. Parikshit Roy, who will be moderating this session. Over to Minimon.
Hello.
Hello, sir. Over to Minimon, who will share the objective and larger purpose behind the Caleedo Talks series of webinars. Deepak?
Thank you, Sakshi. Hello, all, and welcome to our webinar series, Caleedo Talks. This is a series that we have designed differently to help our audience and the community at large to make informed and independent opinions on various trends, issues, and developments that are ongoing in the industry. Our panelists are extremely experienced professionals and industry thought leaders, and their perspective, we believe, would add adequate clarity and knowledge on this subject and all the subjects of our future webinars. I would request our audience to use the Q&A section to ask any question that they might be having on this subject. At the end of the discussion, we would try and answer some of these questions. Secondly, I would also request our audience to please share their feedback and suggestion that they might be having on these webinars so that we can make them informative and relevant. Our next webinar will be held on 16th of December on an equally important and relevant topic, that is indoor air quality at workplaces and commercial buildings. Make sure to follow us on our social media channels and watch out for any communication to register for this event. I would now request Mr. Parikshit Roy to start with the session.
Hello and good afternoon to all of you. And I'm extremely delighted to have the company of two very senior industry leaders with me this evening, and likewise eminent professionals from in the audience. We thank you all for your participation and your time. In this session, we are discussing on a very, very contemporary theme on rebooting employee experience and engagement in this new world of hybrid workplaces. And I decided along with my colleagues that we should host this session where our industry, senior industry professionals like Mr. Sadanandan and Reshmi can share their perspective on this evolving topic. I call it evolving because I think every month we are reinventing, realizing that there are many facets to this whole phenomenon. The hybrid work, which combines the on-site and the remote work, is becoming a new normal for most organizations, not only in India, but across the world. And there's no denying that this model is far more challenging, not because it is evolving, but it's something that we have never handled before. And therefore, it's a complex combination of a full virtual or the erstwhile office model. So it's somewhere in between, and therefore this paradox. Many business leaders, as you can understand, are faced with this challenging priority to maintain a cohesive and a consistent organizational culture while they migrate to this new work regime, where some work would get remotely done while others may choose to operate from office. And this flexibility is where probably this whole paradox or the challenge comes from. Now, during the pandemic, while on one side, the organizations were grappling with the overall business challenges, on the other side, we found that they had to address people and process issues while managing those challenges on the external front. And therefore, there was a huge tightrope approach towards managing the erstwhile organization culture. Now, while many organizations are talking about hybrid work forms, return to work, not much has been spoken about the culture bit. And therefore, we thought that this would be important and relevant for us to really take that up. In a very interesting survey, which was carried out and which I had the privilege of being a part of, there were certain questions posed to employees across multiple age groups to find from them what kind of challenges they foresee or what kind of issues they foresee in hybrid working. And the responses, I can bet, were very interesting and insightful. Some of it are known and some may not be. Unlike what we've been reading for and on behalf of hybrid, majority of the employees felt that hybrid working, while helps them in some form in connecting with their colleagues and making them understand, real life feedbacks, they also saw that there were consistency issues in the organizational culture, and in certain cases, the way organizations were dealing with them on an everyday basis. They also were not quite sure or evident that how this would really continue in the hybrid form, because in the hybrid form, they were overwhelmed. I mean, in organizations which had moved to a semi-hybrid form, that they were overwhelmed with virtual meetings, messages, and emails, which they felt were really difficult for them to really adjust and manage. So contrary to many claims that this is affecting, this is helping organizations, the contrarian view is that the employees are psychologically quite stressed out. And that is leading many gurus to now term that as a contextual perspective of the Great Resignation. All of you must have read about this whole Great Resignation phenomena, which is also reflecting of how employees are feeling about this whole transition. And especially the millennials who are new to the work and the work environment, how they have taken to this remote and hybrid mode of working. So that is the context which my co-panelists and are on their own managing this phenomena, this transition, would probably help us to understand. And I would now, in a last minute of what I call it a context setting, well, on the subject of culture, and which is very dear to me personally. Culture is the foundation of an entire organization and an organizational journey, which predicates the success of aligning people, values, business processes, and therefore builds what I call the DNA of a business. And in most successful organizations, values, beliefs, actions, and culture eventually deliver great results. And we've kind of great business minds, great business leaders have always attributed their culture as one of the reasons for their success or sustained success. And to kind of top it all, I mean, I refer to Peter Drucker, who famously said that culture eats strategy over breakfast. So having said that, I think what we would probably do in this session is that in this new environment where we are all discovering how to repurpose the workplace. So I would remove the workplace part, not completely, it will figure in our conversation, but it would emphasize more on the whole paradigm of how this remote hybrid work phenomena is impacting employee experience. How are we able to hold and improve the employee experience in this whole transition from traditional work to remote work and now hybrid work, and how the organizational culture fits in this whole transition process. Our conversation today would also throw light from our industry leaders who are our panelists this evening on how workplace leaders and professionals in this fraternity need to step up the game, because managing a workplace is no more going to be the same as it used to be prior to 2020. And that whole game needs to be stepped up. And why that whole game needs to be stepped up is what I've said in the last couple of minutes, including the fact that technology is really prompting workplace managers to kind of embed what they were doing at the back of the digital processes, digital platforms that most organizations have started to use more than ever before. So technology, how this would help our workplace leaders to really, handle this transition is also a phenomenon that we'll talk about. While I finish my section and I would request our panelists to step in, I would urge our esteemed audience to register their questions, as Deepak Minimon said a while back on the Q&A section. We would take some of these questions, time permitting, and seek an opinion from our panelists during the session. A big thank you for all who have registered, and more importantly, for your time. I now move over to our first question, which is to Rashmi Shankar. Rashmi, thank you first of all, and good evening for being in this webinar. In your opinion, what are the key attributes that characterize a hybrid workplace, specifically to an Indian business context? And the second part of the question is that from your personal perspective, share, as you wish to, a few workplace strategies that organizations, in your opinion, need to adopt to get to, usher in the whole hybrid working culture. Over to you.
Sure. Thanks, Parikshit. In fact, I was just thinking, that we always say hybrid work, and more and more, I think technology is the key thing that needs to work to make this a success. Because as I was struggling to get onto to this link, to access the link, I was just thinking so many things that can go wrong, right? Earlier it was the erstwhile excuse of traffic or a flat tire. Today is I can't access the link, or I'm not able to go into a particular meeting or whatever. So it's been replaced by virtual problems that we have today. But coming back to your first part of your question, I think the most important key is flexibility. That's the most important thing that we all need to kind of keep in mind, because that's what the workforce is moving towards, and that's what today's workforce is in millennials especially, and more as the newer generations join. I think that's always been an ask which has been accelerated with COVID. So hybrid technically is nothing new, right? I mean, if anybody who's been working across time zones know that, we've always had virtual conferences, you've always had your WebExes and Skype meetings that have always enabled collaboration across the continent. So it's nothing new. Working across time zones, it's nothing new. But to the scale at which we are doing, the way it is sort of permeated the small towns of the world, right? And that's what I think is making this a very unique and novel situation. While it's 20-22 months that we've been experiencing this, I think the way it has accelerated the digitization conversation, the pandemic is what we have to thank for. So key to the success of a hybrid model would be flexibility that you amply provide, a technology platform that, or technology in its entirety that would support your, that flexibility aspect on when and what and how somebody is going to decide on a choice-based mechanism. That's something that will be very key. Inclusivity, what I mean by inclusivity is when you are physically present, there's a background noise. Could all participants stay on mute? I'm not sure, if it is coming from. Yeah, that's perfect. Thank you so much. Very distracting earlier. So, so inclusivity to the extent that you have so many different categories of people, right? I mean, you have working parents, you have people who are taking care of, older folks at home. So all of those people should be able to feel at home in this scenario, so that, nobody feels left out. So regardless of your life stage, regardless of where you come from, regardless of your challenges, you should feel that you are part of that model, whether it is on campus or a off-site model that you have. The other thing is, I would say, health and safety, which in today's world is definitely, I don't think we are really seeing the impact of continued work from home, that, we don't have enough data to say that, yes, this is working well, or, this isn't. So it will take us some more time to really get to know if everybody is, is all right in the sense of an ergonomics or otherwise mental health and well-being. That's another aspect of this whole thing, right? So there's so many aspects that I don't even know where to start. But another key aspect, just in the interest of time, would be digital risk and security, so that, we are protected as an organization to not be exposed to any kind of cyber threat or risk. So that's one key aspect of this entire work from home, because you do not know where the threat is coming from, and how do you foolproof your systems would be a key aspect. Preparation, I think, would involve a lot of conversations with your key folks, and understanding what your employee base requires and are looking for, and sort of customizing something that suits your organization as well as your community, because community and collaboration is probably the foundation of it all. You did touch upon it, Parikshit, initially on culture, and how do you build culture if not through a sense of community? Now, how do you provide that sense of community? Is that going to be virtual, or is that going to be virtually created watercolor moments, or other kind of forums where people can connect and feel at home in an offline online model, a combination of the two rather? That would be another key attribute in the success of hybrid. Hope that answered your question.
Thank you very much, Rashmi. I think very, very illustrative. Yes, I did not talk about the community because I thought that I'd rather get the perspective from you and Mr. Sadanandan. So thank you very much. Mr. Sadanandan, and if you have any additional thoughts on this point.
Thank you, Parikshit, and good evening to all of the participants and panelists. I think Rashmi brought it out beautifully, how the hybrid is going to play out. And I completely endorse what she said. Hybrid is nothing new. We have been used to it. All that is happening now is the scale has increased and the penetration has increased, right? No, over and above what she mentioned about the characteristics of what the workplaces would be, where employees would want more flexibility, and what I would also add is autonomy, that their ability to decide how they want to and where they want to work. That's going to be one key consideration. And also the question of linking the hybrid experience, so the employee's expectation would be, rather than mere transactions, the touch points are in a continuum. Okay, and I will speak about it in a little more as we go to the next session. So these are a couple of additional thoughts I had on the specific topic or theme which you had posed to Rashmi. Yeah.
Excellent, excellent. Thank you very much. And before I go to the next topic or the next question to you, Mr. Sadanandan, I would play a small video. But before I do that, let me put a synopsis to what Rashmi said, and very, very wise and a set of thoughts which probably captures the essence of the hybrid work, the imperatives, and what organizations are trying to do. Rashmi talked about technology being the fulcrum. She talked about the whole attribute of flexibility and flexibility at scale. While the flexibility was there in certain types of industries in the past, but I think most organizations are now open to flexible engagements than ever before. Scale is an important element that she touched upon. I didn't touch upon, and I think she had covered a very, very important topic, which is equally dear to me, on inclusivity. And also, probably she didn't speak of it, but I talk about gender sensitivity on certain kinds of work processes that one would have to dovetail as we go hybrid over the next few months. Some organizations have done it, but the others probably need to be more sensitive about it. Health and safety needs more leadership support than ever before, because the whole pandemic has thrown up things not only about physical well-being, but on psychological well-being. And I think organizations are stepping up their game in making sure that they are sensitive, open, and supportive of employee health and wellness issues. Digital security is clearly something what my organization is working on. I'm not going to talk about it, but to make sure all this happens, given the fact that we would be also virtually working progressively as we move forward, digital security on data protection, organizational, data protection rights, etc., are important. And I think most organizations and large organizations have been working on it. And last but not the least, the whole piece around community. And I think we'll dwell on that community piece in our subsequent questions. Thank you. So my next question to Mr. Sadanandan is that in keeping up with our, keeping the continuity of our discussion, what in your opinion would be the top 3 or 4 employee experience matrix that the workplace of the future, or the workplace that we are seeing the evolution of, that the administrators need to track, manage in this new world?
Okay, thank you. So, we just saw the video, very comprehensive, but speaking much, louder about what the whole meaning of experience is about, right? Obviously, there are multiple elements that contribute to the overall workplace experience. And in today, where the hybrid, which characterizes by the ability for people to work from anywhere, brings in multiple, components and of course challenges for creating the overall experience as it was depicted in the video. Now let's look at 2 perspectives, one from the spectrum of the employee and one from that of the employer, right? So obviously the employers want to retain talent, create the culture, provide learning opportunities, provide a sense of continuity and connectivity, manage burnout, ensure health and safety. There are multiple aspects which keeps the employer thinking about how to deal with this emerging scenario. And obviously, in the overall spectrum of experience, as you mentioned, inclusion, culture, leadership, team, career, learning, with so many other elements, workplace certainly has a significant, impact, and it is very, very prominent in that entire spectrum of experience. Hence, it is important for the workplace managers to have a clear strategy as to how this workplace in a hybrid environment would be seamlessly enabled, and what goes into making that experience, as we just heard and saw in the video. Now, if you look at from the employees' perspective, the employees, as in the first panelist, Reshmi also brought out flexibility, autonomy, the sense that the organization is investing in care and experience, that belief. and feeling of wanted at the workplace. Okay. And as I earlier mentioned, not just one or two transactions just to indicate that, we are taking care of the expectations and thereby creating the experience as expected by the employees. You also need to go a step ahead to ensure that it's consistently maintained, right? So these are the kind of things that will come into play. Now, from the perspective, and workplace managers, you use the word administrators, and I would say that it is more about enablers than administrators. How do we go about and enable the workplace experience, and by providing the right components and elements into the overall workplace requirements that both the organization as well as the employees expect, right? Now, this can only be done by certain measurements, as you rightly said, and there has to be certain metrics to manage it well. So the first and foremost requirement for me, if I wear the hat of the workplace enabler, is to see how am I enabling the work, from where. When we spoke about hybrid, it is work from anywhere. So are people coming back to my dedicated customized workplaces, or are they working from anywhere? If they're working from anywhere, what are the locations they work from? So I really need to see that picture clearly. Then the next step is that if people are working away from their conventional workplaces in a remote location, work from home or work from a shared service, shared facility location, or even from a cafe next door or a coffee shop next door, how do we enable them to work from there? What are the kind of facilities that we need to extend? So the requirement of the enabler becomes complex here. It was easy when you managed it in a confined, dedicated environment in your so-called conventional office. Now we are going to manage it at a distributed level at multiple locations. So what kind of enablement you need to do? So again, some metrics around this. What is the actual requirement for the employees to be actually be able to be engaged and productive and have seamless experience, irrespective of the model of the work they adopt to, either work from office or work from anywhere. So that is another metric I would like to see. So when we speak clearly about the dedicated workplaces, conventional workplaces, certainly health and safety, ensuring the same level of focus on health and safety for people who are working away from the dedicated workplaces. This also needs to be monitored, and some amount of metrics are required. Specifically speaking of our workplace environment, one of the key concerns, as we heard, is that are we taking care of the health and safety of the people? So how do we demonstrate to employees that yes, the workplaces are safe for you to come and operate from? So the metric that we would like to have here is to see that how the workplace is hygienically maintained, how the indoor air quality is, and how quickly we are able to, ensure the sanitized environment should there be a problem related to hygiene and sanitation of that place. And the last of the metric that I would like to have a look at is that how this whole thing is panning out in terms of managing the resources and the cost for the organization. What is the utilization level? Or what is the efficiencies that we are achieving, right? Overall, what I think can really make an experience is a connected digital platform where employees, customers, visitors, and other stakeholders can seamlessly operate. And obviously, by the very architecture of such a platform, I'm sure all these key elements, as I think and I just shared, can be monitored. This is what I want to share. Thank you.
Thank you, CTS, for your very, very insightful perspective. So to to bring this in a few words, I think you alluded to the point of care and experience and the consistency of care and experience. You brought about a very, very important subject, which we probably would gain from, that the workplace administrators of the future need to be more workplace enablers. So the enabling function, the enabling capability is probably the core key result area that they'll be focusing on, that how well are we enabling this whole transition and the new way of working or repurposing the workplace, both for the organization and from an employee standpoint. And I think you've also highlighted on some of the points which Rashmi said, but with certain clarity, which helps us understand and that helps the audience to understand, that how do we not only ensure health and safety, but we evidence it? How do we make sure that the whole broad perspective that organizations claim that we are going to stand by the employees' health and wellness, how are we evidencing it in this critical juncture? That is critical. I've also taken some interesting notes that you talked about, and probably very, very relevant for India, that the utilization and the performance, because we may have very esoteric objective, but somewhere when we go and talk to our financial controllers or people who manage finance, it starts to get decoupled. Okay, while objectives are good, but they look at how it impacts the P&L or the P&L objectives of the organization, and that's where we've seen a big struggle at times. So how do you ensure that whatever is being spent and done is done with the aligned objective and the purpose of the organization at certain levels of efficiency? You also talked about what Rishmi also alluded about, a platform, a digital platform from where customers, employees, organizations can connect and understand this, how these matrix, how these initiatives are working from everybody's perspective. So I think very, very relevant and important thoughts for you. I quickly go on to the next question to Reshmi, that in this conversation, while we talked about certain imperatives of hybrid and strategies, etc., you talked about the community aspect, and you talked about the fact, and I really did not cover that in my opening section. So how do you think that this whole migration is going to kind of take this culture element to a new level, or to probably where it need to go, from this whole Trioka values, purpose and mission, etc., and the community point? So to simplify the question, how would the community engagement usher in an experience which will also help the organizations live their purpose and the culture that they are talking or they are trying to really establish?
Yeah. So what is culture, right? Culture is it's a very I would say it's something that kind of is for me it's like a 50,000 feet high word that people use and abuse at times. But for me, what is most important is, and that's something that CTS also spoke about, right? It's about that sense of belonging and feeling connected and feeling wanted. Today, what is happening is there are folks joining, and we very proudly say that, yeah, we do everything virtually. Onboarding is done virtually. Exit is managed virtually. Everything is virtual. Now, I am a person, for the longest time, if I call a bank, for example, while I know that there is a IVR that allows me to dial a number and easily get the information, I always go for 9 or 0 or whatever that bank allows you to talk to a human who will actually be able to connect and talk to me. And I think that is what will get missing the more we virtualize some of these things. It's while it's both has a place for itself, as in you definitely need information at your fingertips, but you also need that human interaction, because that is very key. It's like, how do you build the relationship with an organization? I mean, when you build a relationship with an organization, that means you're building a relationship with your manager, you're building a relationship with your colleagues, you're building a relationship with all the stakeholders whom you were to interact with in a day's sort of a structure, right? In the olden time. Today, what is happening is I get into a meeting at 9 o'clock or 10 o'clock or whatever. I jump from one team meeting to the other. Unless we ask people to turn on a video, people don't turn on a video. So imagine someone who's joined a new company in the last 20 months. They have no idea how your company or your building or workspace looks like. You do not know how your colleague looks like. You do not know how your manager looks like. So for us as leaders, it's very important for us, because then the culture then it is actually dependent on our shoulders to kind of go and percolate it down. Right now, we have to create with intent. We have to create opportunities for our teams and new members to kind of feel at home. And it's not going to be easy. So you have to literally mirror everything that we used to do in the erstwhile physical office scenario in some manner, merging a virtual and physical model, and create an equivalent. If you don't do that, slowly what will happen is what you see, great resignation might just be a sort of a anomaly, or the reflection of a state of mind currently, which probably will go away tomorrow. But it speaks of a need to connect. And that resignation happens, and resignation I use more in the sense of detachment. It happens more because people are just not having that connect. I know, going back 15 years, some of my greatest friends today are people I met at work. And if how much am I going to get to know a person if I do not interact with that person in a non-Teams meeting setup? Because at the end of the day, so I'll spend a minute thinking about and maybe sharing what I have done in the past couple of years. We have consciously created a connect with my team, my immediate team, where we get together every week on a Friday typically. We call it Chai Pe Charcha. While there have been asked for something stronger than chai, we've stuck to chai because it's during work hours, and we talk of everything but work. So it's about how the week has been, and we all kind of pull each other's leg virtually, and some of these team members have come on board during the thick of pandemic. They had never met each other, and while things eased out, we created an opportunity where we met each other, at least so we know what we look like and what our idiosyncrasies are, and so we have a better knowledge today. But the point is, if you don't deliberately do it, and when I say we, every manager and every team lead has to do it deliberately. So we have to check in on each other, and we have to kind of connect at a personal level for this culture at a organizational level to percolate. And if you do not have that, then it's like, okay, I am working for one company, tomorrow it could be another. As long as my paycheck comes at every 30th or 31st of the month, I don't really look for anything beyond, right? And it becomes very transactional, and that's what we have to avoid. I mean, if I look at Wipro, I've met so many people who have worked here for 20 years, 25 years, so I was telling somebody I've been here 2.5 years. So I said, oh, you're a newbie. So, unless you hit 10 plus, you are not considered to be not a newbie. So from that, today we are looking at an average age of people staying for 2-3 years and moving on. So how do you build that is, I think, at a collective organizational level, what we have to work on, and then we will come to what the vision or purpose or whatever else would come. Because every organization knows what its vision is, and we have a purpose and something that we stand for, which anyway gets covered on day one of induction or whatever. But knowing it, seeing it on a screen vis-a-vis knowing it and feeling it and sort of internalizing it, that comes with experience. That happens. It can be done virtually. It takes a lot more hard work, and I, like I said, with intent, you have to work at it. So it's that much more difficult. But so my 2 cents would be, make those moments, those water cooler moments, getting to know each other moments. If you don't hear somebody in a meeting, checking in on that person to check, if everything is okay, consciously calling out people's name, asking if everything is okay. These are things that would help, because in COVID, one of the biggest learning for me was what's there today is not there tomorrow. So I think with that, every day is a new day, and we kind of keep that consciously in everything we do. So yeah, that's a long-winded answer to your short question, but culture is something that's so vast, and I'm sure CTS can add another 10 minutes to what I just said on this topic. So it's never ending, but I hope I've covered some bit of how you can create culture within a virtual or a hybrid model. Yeah, thanks. Over to you, Parikshit.
CTS, your thoughts, if you want to add a few of your own objectives, own priorities in this. We are running a little behind time, but I'd love to onboard some of them.
So I'll make it very quick, and I think Reshmi covered it very well again. So it has made my job much easier. So certainly, I think the need for now and the emerging future is to actually manage things differently, where the paradigms of leadership management and specifically the people management need to change. That's my, that is clearly directly related to building your organizational culture. The organizations probably will continue to work as a network rather than having everybody together, but we would still need to ensure that all those elements of experiences which Reshmi brought out, to which contributes to building a culture, is actually taken care of. So it is, who is going to build that culture? How is it going to be built? I think these are big questions to be answered, but I think the paradigm should change from the leadership and management levels. That's what I want to add.
Thank you, CTS. So to sum up on what both of you said, that to Reshmi's point, that culture is an abstract subject, okay, and as abstract as psychology is, right? So there is a correlation in this abstraction where psychology plays a role, and I think you have both alluded in your own words how moments of truth. She called about calling names, meeting people physically, figuring out how they're doing, their family's doing. That's one route. The other route is up and acting as a leader to say, or to demonstrate that we mean what we say, and especially in a time when connectivity is all virtual, bring in the human touch, as an airline called it many, many decades back, moments of truth. So bring up the moments of truth to get out of the virtual world where the human element of the touch, the sensitivity is brought up, and therefore probably that could be the most relevant strategy to kind of balance the hybrid, the remote, and maybe some interim form of working that may come up. So great thoughts. My last question now goes out for this session, for this webinar, probably not the last to all of you. But continuing this discussion, in light of this, how do you see the workplace enablers? I'll correct my terminology. How do you see the workplace enablers step up their game from how they used to run their legacy workplaces to the new world of hybrid workplaces?
To me?
Yeah, over to you, CTS.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks. Yeah, and appreciate your using that, more meaningful, term, workplace enablement. That is what is required. The experiences can be created only by enabling, right? Enabling people with the support resources, what is required. So the basic, change, the fundamental change is basic about the mindset that you need to deal with a flexible, dynamic environment. Now, when you were in your physical defined workplaces, your realities were different. But now when you deal with a distributed networked environment, your requirements are different, and you should be prepared to deal with that dynamism and be flexible to adapt to what the need is and to be able to respond to that need. I think that is the first requirement. If I say that if we were to define the anatomy of a workplace enabler as the current and emerging environment would need, the first requirement would be having this flexible mindset, is what I said. Okay. Second is, the ability to involve stakeholder and enable the stakeholders, right? Everything cannot be done by the workplace, administrator, as you use the word, and I'm saying enabler, but he cannot enable it by himself. He would need to bring in multiple stakeholders within the organization, whether it be HR, finance, or any other team that they have to closely work with, and also the external, stakeholders, the vendors, service providers, partners. How did we manage the hardest part of the COVID impact through the lockdown, where many of our critical transactions and critical business applications were to be run from office without the help of the service providers? We couldn't have actually done it. So there is the need for that person to be able to influence and enable the stakeholder engagement. That is, I think, the second characteristics that I see the workplace enabler should have. And the third, of course, is communication. But at the end, perception is reality. So you don't allow people to just go by what they think and what they feel. There is a need for you to communicate clearly, and you also brought that out when we discussed about the safety element. How do we evidence that to people that what we are saying is the right thing? And today they have an option, they have a choice. If I feel not convinced and comfortable with what I am being told, I have an option. I was reading some data which said in the last 7 or 8 months, 1 out of 4 have chosen a new job, right? So that is the kind of environment we are dealing. So being able to communicate and proactively communicate is another key requirement that I would assume is important. And the next is in the dynamically evolving situation, doing something, and saying that this is what it is not enough. We, in our conventional physical workplace environment, you created a workplace, you created a design, you provided the basic elements, and you just managed it, you just administered it. That is not going to be true here. Here things are evolving, changing. So how are you able to dynamically keep up with that flexibility of your mind and your capability of continually improving it? So the ability to see, identify what is the need, and evolve the design elements, the support elements as required for the workplaces. That continual improvement part is the other critical capability that I would think the workplace administrator should have. And last and not the least, but not the least, is being technologically savvy. Traditionally, you've been used to just managing a tool which was given to you. I think that needs to change now. You need to think, not just being able to use a tool, but you also need to be able to conceptualize what is the right tool for me to manage this environment most efficiently and give the experience that I intend or the organization intends to provide to build that culture which we spoke about. So what are the new tools, new technology enabled environment that I need to create? So being able to decide on that, don't leave the decision to somebody else to come and say, okay, this is a tool and take it, you will manage it. I think these are some of the very, very, key characteristics as part of the larger anatomy of a successful workplace enabler for the current and emerging scenarios, in my thought. Back to you, Parikshit.
Thank you, CTS. Rashmi, your thoughts if you want to add.
No, I think CTS did cover it completely. And, from the organization side, it's also important just to de-risk, right? Because what happens when each of these enablers start doing their own thing? Because being flexible would give rise to processes and, procedures that probably are not in keeping and tomorrow could lead to a problem. So at an organizational level, a change in SOPs and policies to support and enable a truly empowered group of people. I think that's also very, very important, so that, 1 year down the line, this is a truth of every scenario, right? You go through an audit and then you realize that you've not done something right, or, you've kind of deviated from policy, etc. So quickly rebooting your policies to also suit the virtual and the hybrid, from simple things like visiting card. Earlier, it was very clear that you come and you pick it up in your stationery room. Today, your policy needs to modify and say that once you order, it needs to get delivered to wherever the person is sitting. So some of those things, I think the organizational side, as a group, also this team will need to enable.
Excellent. Thank you. So again, recapping what you and CTS mentioned, I think the first topic in this question which came up is the dynamism that things, if you really go back and see the kind of fluidity and dynamism that we have seen in the last 18 odd months has been unprecedented. We haven't I haven't seen this kind of change in the whole work format in my 37 years of corporate experience. So unprecedented change, and we are going through that in a manner that we kind of hold the reins and yet make things look that. So I applaud you and CTS that for the kind of organization that you support. This is really a phenomenal time. So dynamism is something that the workplace administrators need to learn far more than what they've done in the past. That's one. The second thing is, therefore, flexibility is key. And how flexible you are to embrace these uncertainty and therefore change your perspectives and the way so being rigid is not going to work. So we have to really revisit our belief system practically at the change of the context or the perspective. The third thing is communication. I think it applies right from the start. If you do not communicate properly, if you do not communicate with the intent that this communication is supposed to convey to the employee and the other stakeholders, the strength of communication, the importance of communication in this hybrid or remote and the eventual work formats is supremely important. And I think we are realizing that right now. Organizations which did not communicate well had, and there are scores of such evidence, which lost people, lost their way, and also earned reputational risks in the process. The other thing CTS talked about is digital literacy, and I have been a proponent of that. When I came into the FM industry 20 years back and then realized that how digitally disengaged we were, okay? And we did not understand or evaluate. We thought process is going to take us home, discipline is going to take us home, characterizing people and their intent and their ability to do things. But digital literacy probably was very low. Last 18 months have told us that while all that is important, extremely important, we need to be digitally progressive, not only from an idea standpoint, but also from execution standpoint. Rishmi, you talked about organizational process change and empowerment to make us go through this process in a manner that we do not deviate the standard operating processes and therefore bring uncertainty in the compliance regime of an organization. Very, very important, which also brings us to the de-risking and the risk mitigation aspect. So sum and summary, and before Minimon takes over, we had a very, very exciting conversation where we talked about technology working at scale, issues of inclusivity, community participation, sensitivity around communication, workplace enablers and their new role and mandate, the whole experience matrix that one is talking about, what are the ones that would really need to be onboarded very, very quickly. Cost and efficiency while we do all this. Can we create a caring, and I call it a care fronting environment, that you do not wish to confront having gone through this whole psychological challenge, but you can add a bit of care to it. So care fronting when we talk on serious business issues. So managers need to, even business managers need to probably re-articulate their position as they talk, because there are significant flashpoints, as I see and hear from many, many business organizations. Very enlightening. We're going to put together a white paper on this conversation to make sure that the community benefits from these wise thoughts and the collective wisdom that we had in this webinar. A big thank you to Reshmi, to you for your time, for your thoughts, and to CTS, Mr. Sadanandanan, for your thoughts and views. Over to Minimon for the closing part of this session.
Yeah, thank you, sir. So we have a question from one of our attendees, and I would like to ask Ms. Reshmi Shankar to, share her views on this. So the question is like, how do you balance the high sense of human touch and high sense of technology in a hybrid workplace to have a great employee experience?
Could you repeat the question? Because I think you read it very fast. Could you repeat it?
Yeah, sure, sir.
Everybody can hear you?
Yeah, yeah.
I think I heard that, Deepak, if I can repeat, it is how do you balance the human touch with the technology? Both
Yeah. Right.
Yeah, okay. So, so you know my views, because I already shared that I am somebody who goes for the human before the digital. But the last few months have taught me that both are equally important. So the idea is that where things can be managed, on an online tool where things are seamless. Today, you see so many services are on WhatsApp, right? It's digital first, in the sense you really don't even have to call anyone. You can just type hi and then just pick the options given, and wherever, even if you're sitting in a meeting, you could be booking a service request for your AC or whatever that is happening. In an office context, you have tools, digital tools that allow you to book your meal and pay for it even before you reach the cafeteria. So digital has its place, but if something happens, if the food is not ready, that is where your human touch comes, right? Because the food, while there are roti makers and dosa makers and you've seen all kinds of technology, I think food still needs a chef to stand behind and be cooked and served to you. So I think it's a balance just like that we will have to strike, and it comes with what CTS referred to earlier, right? Being flexible and being able to operate within the dynamic aspect of, or changing aspect of this whole evolving scenario, because you could have so much ambiguity, that you do not know what's going to happen. So each of us who are in this industry, who have chosen to be in this industry, I'm sure over the years would have also picked up the right balance to manage this. So there is no, I would say, this is the formula to get it right. So you will have to use a lot of your judgment in the particular scenario to say, okay, if somebody is really angry, for example, you're in a flight, you're late for a flight, and your ticket is, or your check-in is not happening. At that time, if the counter person tells you that you have to do web check-in, you have to pay $200, you're naturally going to lose your cool. So nobody wants to go through. So if that person, and this happened to me very recently, where web check-in wasn't happening, and the person at the counter actually very courteously, once he realized that I was very close to losing it, he helped me with taking printout of a boarding pass and giving me. So that person applied the judgment of looking at me, my body language, or listening to my voice and understanding where I'm coming from, and suitably, handling that situation. So each one of us in a customer-facing world, whether it is being done virtually or otherwise, need to know when the digital needs to take over and when the personal will solve your problem. So So I hope whoever it is that asked that question, I hope I was able to give you, but I would really like to tell you there is no secret formula to this. You will have to just play it by ear and get that right as you go along.
Thank you. Thank you, ma'am.
CDS, your thoughts, if you want to add a few seconds of thoughts, if you have any, because we are clearly out of time.
No, perfectly. I think, it is just managing that perfect balance and finding it. I think Reshmi covered it well. That's good enough, I think. Yeah. Thank you.
Minimon, over to you.
Yes, sir. So like final closing remarks. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, CTS sir, and thank you, Parikshit sir. And most importantly, I would like to thank our audience who all have participated in our session. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you all.
Thanks.
you.
Thanks,
Bye.
Parikshit. Thanks, everyone, for this opportunity. Thank you. All the best.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Stay safe. Bye.
Bye.